Welcome back to day 65 of our chess journey to 1500 ELO on chess.com. Now I'm about to reveal the results of the past few games, so if you haven't seen them yet, please feel free to skip this section here because we'll go through some recent stats, because recently it came to my attention that while we have been winning a few games recently, going up from I think 1366 all the way up to 1348 now, a person mentioned to me, if we don't include this loss against the cheater not too long ago, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 days in a row here without a loss. So we have been on a roll now, been feeling really good about it, and this is how I jinx us. Let's jump into a game here and see whether we are able to win today as well or not. We get black today against it looks French. Nurx Nicolas from France. Let's play like this. I guess we'll transpose into a Queen's Gambit declined, although we could have this, but I don't quite know the lines as I mentioned. So instead we'll come up here and get this. Some people like to trade here, some people like to follow the main line, where we will play e7 or bishop to e7 and then look for h6, etc. Let's see what our opponent does. Our opponent might play this, which I know some people do. This is playable, but it's not incredibly accurate. They trade. And now I think we have the option of... yeah, we could play here. I'm not quite sure as to what the best move here is actually already. Already I'm a bit uncertain. I think both moves here are okay. I would like to argue for EX, because then we can transform the pawn structure and we'll have an imbalance. And I like playing with imbalances because it gives the game more life. Although I'm realizing I might have preferred this, simply because c5 here is difficult to play without getting an isolated pawn, which might not necessarily be detrimental rather to our position, but it's not necessarily all that good either. Let's just come on out with our bishop here. I'm expecting this to be the best square because this is available for our opponent. h6 might have been good here as well. Trying to predict any movement to g5. This is an outpost for now, but we could always try to poke at it. I don't quite like this EX move anymore. We'll look after the game here, but I think this might be an inaccuracy rather, simply because c5 becomes difficult to play. The bishop comes out here. Castling might be one of the best moves. Probably is. I'm expecting this next. I think we don't want our knight on c6. The only issue here is this isolated pawn. We don't quite control the squares in front of it. But that's as of now. I think if we do this here, we could maybe play for an asset here. But first I'd like to get some more development. And I think my first idea is going to be castling here. We will see this probably. Or this might be an alternative way of developing. Going for a Catalan-esque setup. Although it's not necessarily quite a Catalan with the trade we went for. Here we see this, quite logical. Now I think we can bring our bishop out. As this trade here allowed us to get our bishop into the game. But this might be playable. So instead here I'd like to argue for h6 first, taking away this and also allowing us to come back to h7 with our bishop if we get hit by the knight. But now this might be a move, I'm realizing. And then we have this. Okay, our opponent plays a bit more defensively, and I think we can bring our bishop up here now. Developing it to an active square. This might still be a move, but I think I prefer this. Because I don't quite like trading here after this, and we could come back, I guess. Well, it might have been good. But we would have had to worry about some discoveries, etc. at some point. I'm not quite sure. I'm actually realizing I like this better than I thought. For some reason, I didn't consider this as a move. Well, this is not the end of the world, it's just a slight difference in plans. We occupy this diagonal instead, which is quite powerful as well. And we'll have some long-term pressure into our opponent's position. Still, I'm kind of annoyed at myself here for capturing with the e-pawn, because our only real way of striking at the center here is through playing c5, after which we get the isolated pawn. But we might find some way of playing this for a good position still. If we are able to, let's say, push this pawn and trade it for the e-pawn, then it's not going to be an issue. And if we can defend it sufficiently, it might become an asset. Although my main issue with isolated queen pawns is I've not really got a lot of experience playing with them. Typically speaking, I tend to play against them, and I absolutely do not try to get them in my own games here, but this might be our only real plan to play for an advantage. Because I can't identify any other plans, at least, not as of now. We could trade bishops, that might be okay. a6 to build for space on the queen side might be okay. This takes away some moves from our opponent. The issue is, if we don't play this soon, our opponent is probably going to play against this pawn. But is that an issue? We could play c6 and kind of turtle and play defensively here, and then see what happens. I think I might prefer c6 because it gives our opponent less play, and then we can take it from there and maybe strike at another point. Then if we play this move, I think we might be looking for this kind of a maneuver, getting in here or potentially onto this square. So following that logic, I think we might want to bring our knight up. This doesn't hang our pawn in front because it's defended by our other knight. This might be our next move. This will give some space for our queen as well. Honestly, I think trading bishops first might have been good because we are getting somewhat restricted here by this bishop now. But it might not be the end of the world. And now this might have been a move, last move as well. Or actually it wouldn't have because of this square, but now I think we can force this bishop off. Can't come here, here, or here. We'll take it wherever it goes. But now the queen comes over. But we were always going to play this, I think. This was going to be our maneuver. So why not keep on going with this plan, but then this becomes a move again. Oh, this is a fork, I'm realizing. But then we have to defend it, and the only move then should be this. Defending this with two pieces and taking away this move. Now let's come down here. It's a bit annoying, we can't pick up this bishop now. Well, if we do get this and this, there might be a horrible argument for playing f6. f6 here looks disgusting. This pawn structure is not ideal. Ideal here, it would weaken our light squares around our king. It's honestly a bit difficult to evaluate. This bishop is strong though. So what is our opponent going to do? I'm expecting this kind of a play, but still this doesn't quite convince me, because once we play c6 here, there is no attack along the c-file. But then this, no, this is not a move even. Yeah, I think this is going to be our move now. We defend our pawn. We deal with this. Yeah, this looks pretty good to me. Just want to make sure we don't have this immediate move. I don't think we do. f6 does not look... Yeah, it doesn't look like something I'd like to play at least. It might not be the end of the world still, as I mentioned. Might give us a slight disadvantage. But our opponent would still have their light squared bishop, and then we might be weak here with our king. It would be funny here if our opponent tried to double up rooks here and we just took. But well, that's not going to happen. Instead, what could our opponent play? They can't trade here because of this knight. This knight doesn't have a lot of squares. So we get this move. I think our best plan here is probably going to be takes, and maybe playing up like this ourselves. I don't think we can ignore this knight. Although we might actually be able to, I'm noticing, because takes, and this looks pretty okay. So I think we might want our opponent to take us here, but they don't have to take. They can occupy this outpost, and that's not ideal. So let's come on ahead and take here. And let's not let that knight get too powerful. Now we should have a couple of options. We could come up with our queen. We could play with our pawns here. We can't quite come up like this because of the bishop. This move. Honestly, and I know some of you guys might be incredibly opposed to this, I think I want to go for this idea. I simply want to create some play here, some imbalance. And although it's probably not the most accurate move, we get the bishop here and can try to look for a long-term advantage. Our opponent can't quite expose our light squares here, because our own light squared bishop is going to be protecting our king. Well, that's my logic at least. It might be flawed. But we'll still go for this. This might be an interesting transformation as well of the pawn structure. If we get this, then we might slide on over with our bishop and try to play on the e-file. This could happen as well, although I'm expecting this, forcing us to play f6 if we want the bishop. And as I mentioned here, that's probably what we're going to play. This horrible looking move. But let's create some imbalances. This should not be the end of the world, I'm pretty sure. We'll restrict the knight as well. There won't be this outpost. And as I mentioned, it's important we have control over this diagonal now to justify our move. Our opponent could try to open up some diagonal here against our king at some point, although they can't for a good while because we control this. The knight jumps in. Okay, so let's have a look here. This is all. Yeah, none of those moves here exist in my book at least. I'm not seeing how our opponent moves forwards. We are going to get this. This is forced. And then we might want to play... We don't have to take the bishop yet. Simply because it can't move. So I'm honestly looking at an immediate rook to e8, preparing for the file to open up. No, I'd like to take first, because if the file doesn't open up, I don't like our pawn play on the queen side, so I want an avenue where we can actually attack. This knight looks powerful, but the second we play this move, it should be dead, and this pawn can't be targeted because our opponent doesn't have an E or a C pawn. This bishop looks pretty good now, as it's steering down here. I still think this is pretty okay. I don't feel like it's as bad as it might be in other positions here. Although we do still have this idea, which looks like a fork. But this can't be taken, because then we get counterplay by our opponent. So first let's come in here, and then let's take it from there. So which move am I expecting? I think this will happen. Knight back to f3. This is playable as well, although it doesn't quite convince me. Or well, it might be good, coming down here for this outpost. But we'll see what our opponent does. They go back here, looking for this. Now I think we could go bishop to d6 here, hitting the pawn. So if they move here, we get the pawn, and this would open up the e-file for us. But this looks like a tricky move instead. This, and if they come up here, this forks the pawn and the bishop. Or so I'd like to say, but there is this move. So honestly, queen to c7 here might be a move. Defending the pawn here and hitting this. So let's look at this. But now, yeah, I think this might be okay. What happens here, here, and here? Oh, that doesn't quite convince me. So let's play this defensive move here. Or, well, it's also developmental. It connects our rooks, protects this pawn, hits this pawn. It doesn't... Yeah, I guess it does hit. No, it doesn't. I was thinking this wins the pawn, but they can take with the pawn. And this is a weakness we want to target, because it's an isolated pawn without forwards mobility, so we don't want them to connect it to those pawns here. And if they take here, this becomes protected, and that's not ideal. If they come up here and we go here, I am expecting this, but then our opponent gets some light squared weaknesses of their own. We do have to think about the potential of this move annoying us if we want to come down here with our own pieces. So playing bishop to g6 preemptively, trying to predict that move, might be good in some positions. I think it's going to depend on whether we have time to invest a tempo in this kind of a move or not. We'll just have to see what our opponent does. Now I'm realizing this pawn here is not protected. So if this gets hit in any way, we have to be careful. Because this can't take, then we lose our queen here. As I mentioned, this might be our ideal setup, followed by this kind of a move, or an idea. This might be okay. I think we'll start off here with playing logical moves. This also controls this. This doesn't do a whole lot. Well, it looks annoying, but it could get us trapped too. this. And I'm not quite convinced. So let's come back here. Play logical moves quickly. They shouldn't be bad, although they might not create immediate threats. Now this is playable, but that's not the most annoying diagonal to have to deal with. Once again, making a mental note, this pawn is not protected. So at some point there might be an argument for playing this, defending the squares we are defending already, but moving out of this X-ray attack here. Once the position opens up, the bishop here should probably favor us. We'll have to see. We would have to be able to... Yeah, we have to be able to... what was I going to say here? Prove the advantage, rather. Prove the two bishops are better than a knight and a bishop if we get to that kind of a position. And that might be fun to do. It's not always that easy to do consistently. This move, okay. This seeks to play this, hitting at our pawn structure. Now what happens if we just come up here with our queen? Hitting this pawn, applying pressure here and denying b5, then this might become a weakness, I don't know. This might become a move, but this strikes me as the most logical response here, so we'll go on ahead and play it. Now this is defended, so our rook can move over here as well at some point. We'll have to see. And also we are able to take this knight now and then take the pawn. But if we follow this line for a little while here, we lose this pawn at the end of it, I think. Or do we? Now we could go here and hit this pawn, but I don't think losing this pawn for this one is worth it. We would still be up a pawn, but I don't think that advantage is sufficient. While we would have two connected passed pawns in the center of the board, so that might be good actually. We'll have to see. The knight jumps in. Now this is a move. Okay. We can't play this now. I don't want to play back here though. Coming back seems annoying, but we do have to address this. For some reason I missed this idea entirely, although we were talking about it a second ago. This is a move as well, and the knight is just jumping on into our position. We might have to come back with our bishop. Allowing this, but that's just something that's going to have to happen. You can't win them all. We made a slight mistake and we'll have to deal with that. I'm not expecting this. That's probably too weakening. It might be playable, but it doesn't quite convince me. But if this is played, we have to come back here, unless we want to get forked. And then this diagonal becomes annoying, and this can get exposed. But this is our only way of not losing material here. This is well played by our opponent. This, well, this is not playable because of this, I think. We'll have to see, but we are forced to drop back at least. This bishop could come here, but not now. Then we take this pawn. I regret playing queen to b6 here. Or do I? We could come back, hit this pawn, and how does our opponent defend it? We could hit the pawn like this as well, which I think looks better. Let's just play this move. We don't have infinite time. We hit this. To defend it, our opponent would have to come back here, I guess. But then they drop this pawn. Luckily here, our opponent can't quite make a queen-bishop battery here along this diagonal. The pawn is pushed, but that's a major commitment by our opponent. Now this is looking like a juicy outpost. We just control everything and we can't be dislodged. Or we can actually. No, we can't. This we take, and this looks good. Okay, let's come up here and play a game of chess. We hit the rook as well, just annoying our opponent ever so slightly. If this is ever played, we have this. Our opponent tries to force this move. We could play this. It doesn't quite look like the best move to me. But still, as I mentioned, I think playing logical moves... Well, actually, this is not that dangerous now, I think. If we come back here, we threaten this. And we can play this, dislodging the knight. I don't think we have to worry about b5 anymore, because of this rook not being present. We have to find a place for this bishop as well now. It's been forced back into a cage. This allows us to come up at least. And then we can connect our rooks along the e-file. This would allow some annoying play down here though, and open up the square for a lot of pieces, so we have to make a note of that as well. If this is pushed, well then the king is looking weak. This might be an idea, but not as long as this knight is here. But b6 can always be played. We'll just have to find the right moment. I'm honestly quite happy here. Our opponent closed down this. Now we don't have to worry as much about our weaknesses here, unless our opponent is able to weasel their way in with a queen like this, for example, but, well, that's not easy to do, and the queen can't do anything by itself. This looks annoying. It would force this, but then we get a free pawn. But it is a mental note we have to make to ourselves at least. So this knight, it has to go. The knight has to go. If we play here and the bishop comes down, we can't take, I think. I think we'll start out with this. This looks like a free pawn, but I don't want complications, so I'd like to get rid of this first. And then we take the free pawn. If this, we come in here, and that's a free pawn, they can't defend it. At least not from what I can see. So I'm expecting this. And then we take this. The king is even more open. And there is no immediate counterplay. Or so I'd like to say, no, this is not playable because we take and take. I'd like to get back here. No, here, do we take or do we push? We probably have to react at least, because we don't want them to take. I don't think at least. Takes, takes, and we can get our bishop up with tempo. But then they take this. Well, still I think we have to take here. We are losing time quickly. So we have to be careful about our clock. This is hit now. So we probably have to play up here. Oh no, that's no good, I think. This might have to be our move. Defending this pawn while maintaining our defense of the bishop, I think, in all of the lines. If we get hit here, well, that's looking annoying. Now we have to slide on over here. And defend. We are both getting low on time. So we'll have to see whose nerves hold out the best. I'd love to get our queen here and hit everything, but then this would have to happen beforehand. The pawn is hit, or is it? I don't think it's hit if we play this move. Kind of is, but I think the position is not losing. What happens if we get this, though? I didn't calculate this line. Oh no, but this is good. And this comes with a check. And I think we are in a good spot. Now this is not something I considered at all. This is a good move. Oh god. How do we go about this? I think we have to come here and hit everything. If the knight takes, we take the rook. This position here is too complicated to play with our time situation here. But our opponent is running low as well, so let's hope we are more accurate than they are. If this happens, I don't quite know what our move is. This pawn might be lost either way, or is it? This and our bishop hangs though. But then we come in here and hit the rook. We could slide on around here and hit this pawn, for example. Our opponent takes the pawn. I think we'll take here. This should be forced, and then we come in here and take this rook. Oh, they have discoveries against our king though. God. I think we might have to go for it. The rook is going to move. I guess here we come over here. They might take like this. Oh, this should be their move. Let's try to force some material off the board. There is a lot of stuff happening here and not enough time. For once again, our opponent is actually using their time, and that's a refreshing sight. Now this looks like a checkmate threat. Does our opponent defend against it? We'll have to see. They do. In an interesting way. But here I think we just keep our threats. Now we still have access to everything, and we hit all stuff in their position. We don't have this now though. Let's see, the queen comes in. Do we have some play here? If this is played, let's come on over here. And then our opponent doesn't have a perpetual here at least. Don't want to give them a perpetual here when we should be in a winning position, I think. Let's come up for the check. Now we can come in like this. But this looks like mate in 2. We check here, and then we come here with our queen, and this should be winning. There we go. We win again today. This was a really fun game. Well played. Thanks for the game. To Nrux Nicholas from France. Let's jump on ahead into the game review, guys. So today we played with 92% again. Wow. And our opponent played with 83.3. We have really been on a roll lately. I haven't mentioned this, but recently I stopped working in my job I worked at, and after that I've been having good sleep for the last couple of weeks, and I didn't know I could play to this level. I have been playing to recently, and this has been really fun to see. We might have some lower level again of play once we get back to the semester in the fall, because I might not be able to sleep out every night, but I'm really liking my gameplay at good sleep. Let's see the review here. This was all good. This was good as well. I didn't quite like this. Was the night capture good as well? It was not. This was not as accurate. This was slightly better. Okay. I guess we'll just have to find out. I guess there's probably a lot of theory, but I might read about this in my spare time to see how you should complement this without having to play c5. And c5 might be the best move even, as I mentioned. But it's not quite so here, I guess. It is a book move. The computer doesn't bless it. I think for the same reason I didn't. No, that's not it. This is apparently inaccurate because of g3 and applying pressure like this, and now this pawn can't move and we can't defend it with a pawn. We went here, all theory. This was not the best move. c6 was good. I did not want to play c6 at all. I thought it killed our play, but we identified later on that this was indeed a decent move and we should just adjust our plans. We did not have to play c5. The bishop comes out. The best move here was bishop to d6, coming up here and trading, which we did look at later on. I didn't want this bishop to be so powerful, and this was apparently the way of doing so, even at this point. Or doing so would be getting rid of the bishop, rather. Our opponent took advantage of our mistake. We went here, while in this position, once again, c6. Or queen to c8, but that doesn't look that good. It doesn't get developed. We just put it behind our pawns here. Gets difficult to connect our rooks. Well, now we went c5, but how should our opponent have punished us? Because this was a great advantage. a4. a5 would have been first, probably. What happens here? Then if a5 and we go back, yeah, they take here. So we would have had to play a5 here, which is a move I did not want to play at all. It might have allowed for this outpost, but I'm not quite convinced. This is an outpost now, or is it? Yeah, looks like it is. The bishop comes into c7, is the best move apparently. If c7 is down here, oh, we get this. And we lose the knight. Yeah, that's not ideal. This was best, and what happens here? Oh no, we take the knight back, but no, this looks horrible. Also, we can't go for that. That's no good. This was an idea, not the most accurate one, as we found out. It didn't go punished. This was essentially first. Apparently g5 was playable. That's not quite my style. This was best. We jumped over here and took. Now what would have happened here? Was f6 playable? Yeah, it was in top 3 actually, at least at this depth. The lower depth might not bless it as much. here and back to g3. fx is not that good. This would have been best, and we would have had this kind of an imbalance. But our opponent went up here, we got this, and now this became a weakness. We didn't quite get to target the d-pawn though. We went up, I regretted this move. The best move here was going to b6 up here. This was bad. The computer just laughs in our faces. Well, it had a reason of preventing this, but I guess that's just too slow. We don't have to play this yet either way, because the knight is still hanging if they come there. And my point being here is if they play this, we take the knight. So this was premature, a bit too premature. This was okay. The best move was rook f to e8, which makes sense too. But what happens if they push here? Bishop to a3. Huh? What? Am I missing something? Oh yeah, this is hanging. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. But still, that's not a move that's going to be played. What a bizarre move. And what happens if this is played? Takes on e2. A brilliant move. If they take the rook, bishop takes d3 in this, but oh my god, no, this is... I mean, it shows the beauty, I guess, of the geometry on the chessboard at times, but no, this is bizarre. We went here, got this, all good. This was an inaccuracy. f5 was good here. Yeah, this makes sense, I guess. They can't push here, and we open up our rook and just x-ray the pawns here. If this is played, the best move would be b5. We take here. If they take... Oh no, that's not... Oh, it works as well. I meant to play this, but both moves work. Knight to d3. This is temporarily protected. But we can hit this pawn, which becomes difficult to defend. We can add pressure here. Yeah, I was going to say we can't, but this hangs like this. This was a really interesting way here, f5, of breaking apart their structure and getting activity. We went like this, applying pressure, but now they got f5. We went back, this was all good. This was not the best move. Bishop to d2. Okay. And what happens here? And then to g5. Yeah, I don't quite know. I guess we dislodge the rook. We take. This was not the best move. We should have went to d7. But here I was afraid of this move. King to h7 here, and the computer is just unafraid. Giving back the pawn. Instead, we protected it. We went back like this, came out to the side, our opponent blundered. This was good. The best move was taking on this. I guess it's going to depend on rook a to d8. Is this best? Yeah, this is best on a deeper depth. This was logical to me, getting material. We dodged to the side. The best move here was a to e8. The other rook, I didn't quite see a difference. Here, taking the pawn was best. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I kind of missed this. It does the same thing as this. We just get the extra pawn and pin the knight. This was good. This was good. And here our opponent made some mistakes. Mate in 9. I would never have found mate in 9. Going to... Oh well, this was... Yeah, this made a lot of sense as well. This made a whole lot of sense. But to be honest here, taking this diagonal here and threatening to come in with both pieces made sense as well to me. We went like this and got a checkmate. Let's have a look here at what would have happened if our opponent found the best move, f3. Does our attack die out here? g3. Coming down here. And going to f4. Well, this might have happened. I don't feel like this looks logical though. But if we force the king out, that's a miss even. But going to e4 just does not make sense. We chase the king and it comes down here, and I don't even know, this is bizarre. Well, we won like this. Never mind, let's go back a bit further. We won like... How far back did we have to go? Back here, of course, yeah. There we go. We got this checkmate, and we won our game today as well. Bringing us up to 1455 today. Well, this has been a long video today. Thanks a lot to our opponent once again for a great game. This has been our game for today, guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye bye.